You know, deep in the heart of Europe's forests, there's an invasion happening, and it's totally silent, microscopic even. It's going on right under our noses. We're not talking about armies or animals here. No, this is a biological war, and it's for the very survival of our trees.
So you have to wonder, right? What exactly is this invisible enemy? What's behind all this quiet devastation that's unfolding across the continent? All right, let's really get into it.
Okay, so first up, we need to frame this correctly. We're talking about an invisible war, a war waged by tiny, microscopic invaders against, well, some of the oldest living things on Earth.
So, the culprits have a name. Scientists call them invasive forest pathogens, or IFPs for short. And the crucial thing to get here is that these are not your run-of-the-mill native diseases. Nope, these are foreign agents. They're basically hitching a ride on global trade, and when they land in a new spot, the local trees, they just have no natural defense. And here's the key. They're introduced by humans. That part is on us.
Now, this problem isn't exactly brand new, but the scale of it and the speed, that definitely is. And believe me, the story of how this whole thing has ramped up over the years, it's pretty staggering.
Just take a look at this timeline. I mean, it tells the story perfectly. For over 100 years, from 1800 to the early 1900s, new introductions were just a slow trickle, barely a blip on the radar. But then, after the 1920s, things start to pick up steam. You can see the rate climbing. And then, bam. From 1980 on, it's not just an increase, it's an absolute explosion. It's exponential. The whole thing went from a slow burn to a full-on, out-of-control wildfire.
So where are these invaders actually coming from? Well, this chart basically maps it onto our history of global trade. Check it out. Before the 1940s, it was mostly European pathogens just spreading around Europe. Makes sense. Then, from the 40s to the 60s, North America becomes the main source. But look at that last bar. That's our modern era, and it shows that overwhelmingly the new arrivals are coming from Asia.
So here's the bottom line. Our global trade routes, they've become pathogen superhighways. The very same ships, planes, and trucks that bring us all our stuff, they're also giving these tiny invaders a first-class ticket to brand new continents.
Okay, so how exactly are they catching a ride? Well, the research points a finger at one main culprit: living plants for trade. Yeah, seriously, that pretty potted plant you might pick up for your garden, it could basically be a Trojan horse, carrying an invisible pathogen right along with it. And get this, that one pathway accounts for a massive 57% of all introductions. And it's gotten way, way more common in just the last 40 years. Of course, they travel in other ways too, like on wood, soil, or seeds, but almost all of this is completely unintentional.
All right, so we've covered the what, the when, and the how. Now let's get to the where. Which parts of Europe are really on the front lines of this thing?
This map really lays it all out for us, doesn't it? The darker the color, the more invasive species that country is battling. And you can see these really deep dark shades. We're talking over 40 different species. They're clustered in countries like Italy, France, and Austria. It paints a really clear picture of where the front lines are, right there in Central and Southern Europe.
So why them? Why those countries specifically? Well, it's really a cocktail of reasons. First, you've got high environmental diversity. Lots of different kinds of forests, which means more potential homes for these pathogens. Then you have densely populated areas with tons of human activity and, of course, a high volume of international trade. Those are the main doorways in. And here's a fascinating little detail. Countries that were part of the former Soviet bloc, they used to have fewer invasions because they had less trade. But now, they're starting to catch up.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second. We've talked about where they're landing, but what about the invaders themselves? What are these pathogens actually like?
This chart is kind of like a rogues gallery. And look at this. A whopping 70% of these invaders belong to just one group, the Ascomycota fungi. If you've ever heard of Dutch elm disease or chestnut blight, yep, that's them. Then you've got oomycetes or water molds making up another big chunk, and their numbers have been shooting up lately.
77%. That's a huge number, right? Well, that's the percentage of these pathogens that are specialists. So what does that mean? It means they are laser focused. They're adapted to attack just one specific kind of tree, like only ash trees or only elm trees.
But, and this is a big but, what about the rest of them? Those are the generalists. And even though they're rarer, they might be even more dangerous. Why? Because they're not picky. They can jump from one type of tree to another, which makes them an absolute nightmare to try and contain.
And the type of threat has evolved too. Back in the day, before, say, 1920, most of these invaders caused leaf diseases. Bad for sure, but not always a death sentence for the tree. But the ones showing up now, they're a whole different beast. They're causing things like cankers and root rot, diseases that are way more likely to cause major dieback or just kill the tree outright. The threat isn't just growing, it's getting more lethal.
So, this all leads to the big question, right? What on earth can we do about it? And the scientists who did all this research, well, they came to a very, very clear conclusion.
And honestly, it's a pretty sobering one. Eradication seems to be impossible. Prevention seems the only reliable measure. Just think about that. Once one of these things gets a foothold, getting rid of it is next to impossible. The battle is basically lost before it's even started. So our only real weapon, the only thing that works, is prevention.
And the stakes here, they're huge. And it's not just about the trees. Let's talk money for a second. The estimated annual cost of all alien invasions in Europe is around 10 billion euros. And most experts think that number is actually an underestimate. The cost of just sitting back and doing nothing is just immense.
So that leaves us with a really tough final question. I mean, our entire world is built on global trade, on the free movement of goods. In a world like that, can we ever really close the door on the next invasion? Is it even possible to protect our forests without fundamentally changing the way we all live and trade? That, right there, is the massive challenge this invisible invasion leaves us with.